Welcome back to SOD TV's Daily Warcraft Logs Update. Today's leaderboard shows some major changes, so let's dive right into it. Since yesterday, there's been a shake-up in the rankings that's worth noting. Cuties, the unstoppable Arcane Mage from Living Flame EU, has upped their game, now boasting 8 days at 1. That's one extra day of leading the pack since yesterday. Alondo, the indomitable Fury Warrior with HL and PALs from Crusader Strike US, maintains a solid 7 days at the top, holding firm to their position. Meanwhile, Fat, the Protection Paladin from Shangming Liyan TW, has stepped up to match the 6-day leaders, showing the unyielding spirit of Quanchang Shen. A new challenger, Jiaqige from Gulang TW, emerges on the leaderboard, fiercely claiming 6 days at the 1 spot as a Fury Warrior. The rest of the crew, Jaini Delano, Fate, Rumbles, Ajanine, and Hakwin, continue to hold strong with 6 days of dominance in their respective classes and specs. Today's balanced Druid leaderboard sees a new champion innate from Crusader Strike US in the Humbertism Guild, boasting a DPS of 1051.2. Yesterday's leader, Blazurus, holds steady in second place with a DPS of 1026.6.5, while Bobaloo makes a leap to third with a DPS of 989.6. The rest of today's top 10 are Honeycow, Stickman, Solex, Rooftralinks, Drayton, Loria, and Surge of Star. Today's Feral Druid leaderboard also has a new king. BGTD from B Tribe has roared to the top with a DPS of 1453.6. Parspolis from Silver Saga continues. Yesterday's leader is now in second with a DPS of 1372.8. Swag Donald holds steady in third with a DPS of 1310.5. BGTD's rise to the top is impressive, especially after being second yesterday. Parspolis, despite dropping to second, has held a top spot for 2 consecutive days, showing their consistency. Rounding out the top 10 are Caddy Peas, Lowclaws, QI Wang Jing QE, Lawsuit, Talon, Yubing Bing, and Deep Druid 2. For Tank Druids, NMX from Lone Wolf US maintains the top spot for the second day with a DPS of 848.2. Killjoy Pili from Living Flame EU has surged to second place with a DPS of 831.1, and Minetses from Living Flame EU rounds out the top 3 with a DPS of 811.0. Notable shifts include Ankler dropping to 4th and Jaini to 6th. The rest of today's top 10 are KDDD, Ekmo, Optimalgal, Petalchik, and Kamikaze Kong. Next are Melee Hunters. For the 3rd day in a row, Tree Ranger from Living Flame US holds the top spot with a DPS of 1556.9. Algi from Living Flame EU maintains the second position with a DPS of 1514.9. Azeroth from Living Flame EU has climbed into the top 3, boasting a DPS of 1498.8. Yesterday's 3rd place, Cornshot, has slipped to 4th. The rest of the top 10 are Minyaros, Tenoq, T Waffle Freeze, Zatara, Salenturi, and Fuxlu. Today's top 3 ranged hunters have also seen some changes. Floraberries from Lone Wolf US in the guild Chinese Textile Machine retains the 1 spot with a DPS of 1324.4, holding this position for 2 consecutive days. Disio from Living Flame EU in the guild link logs has climbed it to 2 with a DPS of 1320.4. Skinay from Crusader Strike US in the guild Onslaught has entered the top 3 with a DPS of 1297.3. Kudos to these players. The remaining top 10 are Multigummies, Ruru, Last Dance, Strom, Yechef, Holilar, and Mike. Cuties from Living Flame EU holds the top spot in the Arcane Mage category for the 4th day with a DPS of 631.4. Muju from Gulang TW in the guild Duya Plus maintains second place with a DPS of 613.9, while Mpuaxo from Crusader Strike US stays steady in 3rd with a DPS of 560.1. Let's not forget the rest of our top 10 Diggy Dude greats: All Might Yelf Mei, Zhan Sha Yao Yaoling, Ishipu Fear, and Aluriel. Next are Fire Mages. Maltazar from Living Flame EU in the guild link logs holds the top spot for the 2nd day running with a DPS of 1096.9. Arcana Terror from Lone Wolf US in the guild Chinese Textile Machine maintains second place with a DPS of 1069.9, and Kenny Marsh from Crusader Strike EU remains in 3rd with a DPS of 1065.9. The rest of today's top 10 are Haylorn, Splitter, Chalmang, Hookadreefer, Walter Frosch, Crankazoid, and Metic Nubbin. We've seen a major shakeup in the top 3 Frost Mage players. Watch Tome from Lone Wolf EU has taken the lead with a DPS of 1039.4. Calm from Lone Wolf US follows in second place with a DPS of 944.9, and yesterday's leader, Tekkel from Crusader Strike US, is now in third place with a DPS of 943.2. Tekkel held the top spot for just one day. The remaining top 10 are Trillin, Linshi, Ligej, Chef, Rieri, Densi, and TDMZ. For the sixth day in a row, Fought from Shengming Lai Yan TW holds the crown in the Protection Paladin category with a DPS of 1151.0. Farvolt from Living Flame EU in the Guild Skyline has climbed up to second place with a DPS of 1125.0, and One Punch from Living Flame US in the Guild Cartel remains strong at third with a DPS of 1120.0. The rest of the top 10 are Gonf, Rubisco, Lilac Knight, Altism, Maglish, Hiermea Sai, and Taima Q Fang. Today in the Retribution Paladin leaderboard for the Season of Discovery, Akanos from Crusader Strike US Guild Discovery Monkeys holds the top spot for the second day in a row with a DPS of 1331.9. Janix from Crusader Strike US remains steady at second place with a DPS of 1291.8. Newcomer to the top 3 is Muse from Gu Lang TW in the Guild United GG, boasting a DPS of 1262.1. A quick shout out to the rest of today's top 10 Tinny, Maxia Jie Xiaoxi BA, Jonta Dogs, Tech Deck, Ryu, and Elf Joppa. The Shadow Priest leaderboard has seen a major shakeup. Waga from Living Flame EU in the Guild Link logs now reigns supreme with a DPS of 902.7. Skusho, also from Living Flame EU in the Guild The Crucible, follows closely with a DPS of 891.7. Aplexa Priest from Living Flame EU in the Guild Link logs secures the third spot with a DPS of 882.9. Yesterday's champ, Blacklisted Q, has dropped to the 6th spot. The rest of today's top 10, in order, are Kawe, Diza, Blacklisted Q, Dotco, Sides Xenzway, Masolt, and Scareghost. Today's top 3 DPS rogues have seen a shakeup. Tyriella from Living Flame EU in the Guild Cheers has stormed to the top with a DPS of 1458.7. In second place, we have Reminder from Living Flame EU in the Guild Skyline with a DPS of 1422.0. And in third, Qunyi Zhu from Gulang TW has made a mark with a DPS of 1421.6. Sylve, yesterday's leader, has slipped to the 5th spot. The rest of the top 10 are Brodos Wagon, Simon Izork, Umarin, First Chance Heistatron, and Griffey. We have a new one-tank rogue today, Dean P from Wild Growth EU in the Old Guard Guild, boasting a DPS of 964.5. Yesterday's leader, Hakwin from Wild Growth EU in the Nuspam Guild, holds the second spot with a DPS of 961.7 after leading for several days. Nerf Assassin from Gulang TW in the Nerf Shadow Club Guild remains steady at third place with a DPS of 952.2. The remaining top 10 are Sketcher, Lit, Royak, Sammy, Siayan, Orosaber, and Lesrance. The Elemental Shaman leaderboard has been shaken up again. Hexmither from Lone Wolf US in the Guild Hunks has claimed the top spot with a DPS of 970.3. Yesterday's leader, Relix from Lone Wolf EU in the Guild Ego, holds steady at second place with a DPS of 968.8. Roxarone from Living Flame EU has surged into the top 3 with a DPS of 968.6. The remaining top 10 for today are Mortytide, Rumble's Nian Wu Sinju, HFQT, Galgalon, Davoka, and Kazext. Next, let's dive into today's top 3 Enhancement Shamans. Holding strong at 1 is Aopetasham from Lone Wolf US in Strictly Business, maintaining a DPS of 1550.6 for the second day. Zobe from Living Flame EU in Link Logs leaps to second place with a DPS of 1514.6, pushing Boziter from Living Flame EU in Summers to third place with a DPS of 1483.0. Our remaining top 10 are BDD, Nay, Balgundal, Mahatwo, Barsney, Cryptenhance, and This Next are the top tank shaman players. Nightsong from Living Flame EU holds the 1 spot for the 5th day in a row, maintaining a DPS of 933.6. Ewo from Living Flame EU has surged to the 2nd spot with a DPS of 840.6, and Salt from Living Flame US breaks into the top 3 with a DPS of 735.7. The remaining top 10 are Goat Shaka, Vistalo, Hooks, Shamrib, Bamsegam, Salfir, and Kam. Today's top 3 DPS Warlock players are Taco from Shadowstrike AU holding the 1 spot for the 5th consecutive day with a DPS of 1137.2, Pants from Lone Wolf US maintaining his 2nd spot with a DPS of 1130.3, and a new face, Dogslayer from Living Flame EU in the Guild Link logs, breaking into the top 3 with a DPS of 1103.8. The rest of the top 10 are Strawberry, Pantslock Matre, Pichipopo, Demons, Wulayo de Sese, and Shumike. In the Tank Warlock category, EnigmsXX from Living Flame EU Guild Pepident maintains his reign with a DPS of 1045.0, marking 5 consecutive days at the top. Barot from Lone Wolf US Guild Lethal Company holds steady in 2nd place with a DPS of 972.9. New to the top 3 is Kyrek Meta from Crusader Strike US, boasting a DPS of 952.6. The rest of today's top 10 are HND, Dinosaur, Saibu, Juiced, Flogo, T, and OpenCoil. In the Fury Warrior category, Jia Ki Ge from Gulang TW remains undefeated at the top for the 3rd day, boasting a DPS of 1626.1. Subtamia from Living Flame EU in the Guild Pepident has climbed to 2nd place with a DPS of 1615.9, while yesterday's runner-up, Chaya from Living Flame US in the Guild Impact, has slipped to 3rd with a DPS of 1613.4. The rest of today's top 10 warriors are all Londo, Atasmos, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qwang Dabao Jian, Tuaraki, Donkalike, and Iazi. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video to see who will reign supreme this phase. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more daily content like this. Thank you all for watching.